Disclosure Day has finally arrived in theatres, and after watching the new film by Steven Spielberg, it reminded me of some of his greatest work in the sci-fi genre. It told a compelling story, captured the essence of an older Spielberg blockbuster, and was driven by a strong performance from actress Emily Blunt. I will be posting my in-depth review of the film in a few days' time, but in this particular video, I'm going to be explaining the plot and discussing the meaning of the ending for Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day. Before I get into it though, if you want to keep up to date on any of my videos on the newest releases like Disclosure Day, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into my breakdown for Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day. So the new Disclosure Day movie starts in a more grounded and intimate way, but it steadily widens into something cosmic, dangerous, and unsettling. While the story is completely original, the screenwriter of the film had called it a spiritual bookend to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That Spielberg 70s classic was born from the Watergate era, when the big question was, is the government lying to us? And Disclosure Day flips that idea for a modern audience. Today, the public already knows that they're being lied to. So instead of chasing the wonder of proving that aliens exist, this film dives into the logistical, psychological, and societal chaos of a post-truth world where undeniable evidence finally breaks the illusion. It's less about discovery and more about surviving the fallout of revelation. Coming to the very start of Disclosure Day, instead of the usual sci-fi setup, the movie opens in a wrestling ring. The camera puts us in the place of a wrestler lying on the mat, and it's loud, messy, and intentionally uncomfortable. This opening is essentially showing us the state of humanity caught up in violence and completely unaware of anything bigger or more meaningful happening beyond its own distractions. And as we pull back from that wrestling match, we move to a quiet figure in the stands in Josh O'Connor's Daniel Kellner. He sits there clutching a backpack, which turns out to hold the most important secret that humanity has ever had. Around him though, everything feels bleak, small, and painfully unaware of what's coming. It turns out that the US has moved to DEFCON 2, meaning that the country is one step away from a full-scale nuclear war with North Korea. And this isn't just background tension, as it's the entire reason that Cortex claims it must keep its UFO secrets buried. The company insists that revealing proof of advanced alien life during a moment when humanity is already on the edge would trigger instant global chaos. And in the middle of this crisis, Daniel has stolen hard drives packed with explosive evidence, including decades of Department of Defense experiments on aliens, going all the way back to the iconic 1947 Roswell crash. He's also taken a diving device, a strange piece of alien technology. When used, it lets a person tap into alien frequencies, including becoming invisible and reading thoughts. But the trade-off in that is the brutal physical damage to a human user. So as Daniel tries to escape with all the truth, the film becomes a dangerous back and forth between a man trying to expose the biggest secret in human history and a corporation willing to destroy anything in its way to stop that information from getting out. The film eventually cuts away from the global crisis and drops us into something much smaller but equally as unsettling in Kansas City. Margaret Fairchild is going about her normal day when a bright red cardinal suddenly flies into her apartment suite. It seems random and almost symbolic, but in this world, it's much more than that. This bird acts like a biological key, triggering hidden changes in her mind that have been dormant for years. When she arrives at the TV studio where she works as a weather reporter, everything unravels live on air. Before and during the broadcast, her words slip into Russian, then Korean, and then collapse into harsh clicking sounds that don't sound human at all. The clip spreads around the world instantly, and that single moment sends Cortex and their hunters straight toward the Midwest, setting another dangerous chase in motion. And the second act of the film becomes a non-stop nerve-tightening chase. In particular, Daniel uses the stolen alien device to blur himself from sight while Cortex agents close in behind him. Their leader, Noah Scanlon, played by Colin Firth, has his own device though, and he doesn't just track Daniel. He invades Jane's mind, speaking through her like a puppet and using her thoughts as a map. The diving devices themselves are presented as strange, cylindrical alien tools, small enough to hold but powerful enough to reshape reality. Only 3 of them exist on Earth, each in the hands of a different person, which includes Noah, Daniel, and Hugo Wakefield, a Cortex defector and advocate for disclosure. When a human makes direct contact with one of these rods, it unlocks a surge of extraterrestrial energy and psychic ability that no human body is built to handle. Once activated, the rods can bend light to make the user temporarily invisible, let them slip into someone else's mind, or even unleash enough raw power to bring an entire electrical grid back online. But every use of it comes with a brutal cost. The devices burn the skin, overload the nervous system, and leave lasting psychological and neurological damage. They're not weapons or tools in the human sense, they're alien conduits, and using them is like plugging a fragile human body into a cosmic power source that it was never meant to withstand. Moving on though, as Daniel runs away from Cortex and gets separated from Jane, his path inevitably crosses with Margaret's. And when they meet, the truth finally starts to click into place. It turns out that they are 2 halves of a biological design that the aliens set in motion decades earlier. Their connection is instant, strange, and unsettling, and it pushes them into an initial frantic escape together. With Cortex agents tearing after them in black SUVs, Daniel and Margaret are forced to use the alien diving device in dangerous and creative ways. In the midst of the chase, Daniel and Margaret are saved by Hugo Wakefield's team and taken to his underground network. At first it looks like a simple safe house until they step inside it. It turns out that Hugo has built a perfect uncanny replica of Margaret's childhood home down to the smallest detail. It's eerie and almost too accurate, and it becomes clear that this place has been reconstructed to get answers. The recreated home works like a kind of psychological chamber, a way of finding out what happens to Margaret all those years ago. So surrounded by the sights and textures of her past, Margaret uses the alien device again, and the effect becomes immediate. Memories she spent her whole life unable to access come crashing back to her, and we get one of the film's most haunting moments with a flashback that's intentionally strange and unsettling. Using Uncanny Valley CGI, the sequence reveals that both Margaret and Daniel were abducted as children, not in a violent way, but in a surreal, almost dreamlike encounter. The aliens never appear to Margaret and Daniel as themselves, and instead, when they were children, the extraterrestrials chose to manifest as gentle and familiar animals, whether that be a cardinal, a deer, a raccoon, or a fox. The aliens are shown to be hyper-advanced and fundamentally benevolent, and they understood that revealing their true form to 2 young children would completely overwhelm their developing minds. So they projected themselves as creatures that the kids would trust. Decades later, that same cardinal reappeared in Margaret's apartment at the very start of the movie, not as a coincidence, but as a biometric trigger. It's essentially a signal that was designed to wake up the telepathic abilities that the aliens implanted in her long ago, now that she's finally old enough to withstand them. During their childhood flashback encounter, the aliens made precise neurological changes to both of the children. Daniel was reshaped to understand pure universal logic, the kind of advanced mathematics that sits beneath the structure of reality itself. Margaret, on the other hand, was altered to feel on a completely different level, gifted with overwhelming telepathic empathy. And together they represent 2 halves of a single design in perfect logic and perfect emotion. The aliens understood that humanity's biggest flaw is communication, as we misinterpret, project, and break under truths we can't process. So only by pairing these 2 extremes could humans ever hope to grasp the full cosmic picture without losing their minds. This brings us to the film's final act, which is kind of a high-stakes siege set back at the Kansas City TV station. Hugo, Daniel and Margaret take over the TV station where Margaret works, turning it into a launch point for their final plan. And that plan is to create a worldwide broadcast of the stolen Cortex files. They do manage to escape war decks back at the safe house thanks to Margaret using the diving device, but they are running out of time because no one knows that they are headed there. Daniel gets to work immediately, uploading the decrypted footage to the station servers, footage that shows dead extraterrestrials, secret experiments, and decades of government cover-ups. So for the first time, the truth is seconds away from reaching every screen on Earth. But Wardex does close in fast. Noah surrounds the building with operatives and makes a ruthless call. He orders the destruction of the entire power grid, and this knocks out the station's backup generators. But the darkness in the studio doesn't last too long because Jane arrives, transformed from a frightened victim into a fully committed member of the Resistance. And with her arrival, she carries the alien diving device that Daniel had earlier. With no power left and no time to spare, Margaret then steps forward and uses that device. She channels the device's overwhelming alien energy straight into the station's dead infrastructure, forcing her body to become the conduit that powers the entire broadcast grid. And it works because the broadcast goes live and every screen on Earth is glued to the coverage. And as Noah watches it all unfold, it's in this moment that he realizes with crushing clarity that he has lost. There's no fight left to pick and no secret left to protect. So instead of firing his weapon or making a final stand to stop the information getting out, he simply sits down. He watches the world change forever, his life's work dissolving in front of him, and accepts that nothing will ever return to the way it was. While the broadcast goes live, Hugo Wakefield also reveals something that he's been hiding. He admits that for the past 5 years, he's been sheltering a living extraterrestrial smuggled out of a Wardex black site. This being labelled In Vivo 17 is nothing like the aliens shown in the archival videos. It's enormous, ancient, and it looks to have survived for far longer than its body was ever meant to. When In Vivo 17 steps out onto the broadcast stage, the entire planet then sees it at once. 7 billion people witness a living alien reveal itself in real time. The creature then moves slowly towards Daniel and Margaret and then leans down to Daniel. It speaks a rapid burst of clicks and digital sounding tones like an 8-bit code. And because Daniel is the logical conduit, the one engineered for pure mathematics by the aliens, his mind instantly deciphers this message. But one thing he communicates is that he can't feel the message as the data is too cold and abstract. Without Margaret's empathetic counterpart, the meaning of the message remains incomplete, suspended between understanding and emotion. So Daniel quietly relays to Margaret what the alien has communicated so that she can truly understand the raw meaning behind that message. Afterward, she moves in front of the camera, about to speak to billions of terrified people watching from a world on the brink of nuclear war, and says a single word. She looks straight into that fear, into the fractured global audience, and says the word listen. With that, the film cuts to black with no explanation, no translation, and no comforting answer. Now, I think I know what it meant, and it was genuinely the first thing that came to my mind when the film finished. Earlier in the story, during Margaret's chaotic weather broadcast, one translated line slipped through, and that was, "Don't be afraid of what you don't know." Given that the entire film unfolds with humanity seconds away from World War III, I think the meaning of the whisper is clear. It isn't a prophecy or a threat from the aliens, and in fact, I think it's a plea. I think that the aliens are urging humanity to step back from the brink, to understand that the universe is unimaginably old, fragile, and interconnected, far bigger than our conflicts, borders, or our fear of the unknown. And that's why Margaret's final word in listen hits hard in this moment. The word listen is not just a command, it's a warning and a reminder that humanity can't keep shouting, escalating, and drowning itself in noise. Essentially, the message from the aliens is, quiet the panic and tune into the wider harmony of the cosmos. But that was my breakdown of Disclosure Day. Again, I will be posting my full review of the film in the next few days, so if you want to hear my extended thoughts on it, then stay tuned for that. But if you've already seen the film, then let me know down below in the comment section what you thought and where you would rank it alongside the other great films by director Steven Spielberg. For much more videos and breakdowns, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, rating, and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.